There we go. Oh, hold on. I already screwed it up. Wait 1 second. Wait 1 second. Oh no. Hold on. I have already messed it up brutally. Hold on. I'll be back, guys. Wait, I think I click this and then I click here. They can't hear you yet because I'm bad at this. Device. There we go. All right, that should do it. All right. Hi, everybody. Wait, are you there?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Fuck. Jesus Christ. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Vagabond Dog Industry Chats. This week, we've got our old friend Kate Ludlow on the show. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you.
I know. It's been a minute since we've been in the same room together, but I'm really glad we actually get a chance to sit down and talk today. For those
Yeah,
of
he
you,
was PAX 2019.
yes, right, the last minute before the madness of everything, the last PAX that was fun. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Kate, she is a SpecOps Manager for Devolver Digital. You are responsible for a lot of the things that go on when it comes to convention presence, merchandise, people management at shows. There's a lot of like boots to ground work that you do. But I mean, I guess if you can explain it yourself a little better, hopefully that'll...
Well, I kind of always joke that if I ever really know what my job is, I'm probably not doing anything interesting anymore. Like it's changes so much from day to day. I do the events, I do merchandise, I do all of our travel logistics if we're traveling, I do developer relations, I do some fan relations, I do handle our charitable aspects that we do within Devolver. There's a lot of different things.
Right.
Good. Robbie Patterson, who now works with us in marketing, he described it one time as I keep everything plugged in, including the humans.
Right.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Right. As a developer who's been under the umbrella at shows and stuff, you were often the best point of contact for getting problems resolved, for getting fed in some cases, for knowing what's going on at the convention at large. You know, like very often you're stuck in a booth, you know, for the entire show. You have no idea what's going on outside of your little bubble. So you were always the best person to communicate what's happening with everybody else and that kind of thing. And also you made a very strong effort to make sure that we were like comfortable and had our needs taken care of and frequently checking up on us and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
How it's I mean I've heard some of the story before, but how did this happen? How, like, it's such a strange position. It's an essential position as far as I'm concerned. It is an essential position for a bigger organization. But how did you fall into this world?
Fell into it 100%. Like I there was no job application, there was no LinkedIn listing. I was friends with a friend of Mike Wilson's, and I think a lot of us in this universe at Devolver kind of came from Mike Wilson. And they needed some help, actually, not even at Devolver Games, they needed some help at Devolver Films, rest in peace. And they needed someone to just do some spreadsheet things. And I think I really only got the job because I had too many beers with Mike, and I was the only person who didn't need a full-time job. Was remodeling a house at the same time, so I just needed like a little something to do. I wasn't thinking about that house, and started doing that, and I liked it. I liked the people. I had started kind of meeting a few, but just by email, and just thought everything that was going on was really cool and really interesting, and liked them. And then this is a kind of a sad story actually, but my best friend died, and I had been holding on to a lot of other grief. And I just called Mike and I said, hey, I can't. And I gotta take some time. And I didn't work for almost a month. Like I just laid on the couch and cried, and it was awful. And Mike called me one day and he was like, hey, let's go out and let's talk. So we went, we had coffee, and he was telling me about some grief that he'd carried around. And at the very end of it, he said the very fateful words. He goes, "Are you getting bored yet, though?" And I said, "Yeah, I really am getting bored." So the next day I was like, "Hey, y'all don't have to pay me for last month. Don't worry about it. I didn't do anything." He said, "Yeah, that's not how we work around here." So I'm like, "Okay, I'm dealing with some very human people." And then the next day Mike called and said, "Hey, can you help we're going to PAX South, this show in San Antonio. Can you help get some t-shirts printed?" I was like, "Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, no problem." Oh, actually, can you like help us book this hotel? Yeah, yeah, absolutely, I can do that. And then it was, can you fabricate and build furniture? Can you make welcome baskets for all the developers? Can you come to the show with us and work in the booth? And it just exploded. And it was, suddenly I was there. And I've always been pretty good at problem solving, always been good at event planning. And it was just a lot of that. But it was also just these really, really, I met you on that show. I met the Dodge Roll guys from Enter the Gungeon. I met them. It was their first show with us, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a lot of problem solving and figuring it out. But at the same time, you're hanging out with these just interesting people. Everywhere you go, there's a fantastic conversation to be had, a funny little joke to be told. And I left that show and I was like, well, that was fun. Like that was kind of cool, and thinking I would never do it again. And then about a month later, they called and asked if I would do PAX East. And it was still to this day the worst show I've ever done. So yeah, I left that one in tears, thinking, okay, well, I'll never see these people again. And then they called and asked if I would do E3, and it's. I always kind of say that Devolver is like a Katamari. We just sort of acquire people and things, and
Right.
as we're spinning up or down the hill, depending on what day it is. And my origin story is very much like that. I just met y'all and I didn't want to leave.
Right. That's really heartwarming. The thing that fascinates me about the story from a personal standpoint is you got so hey, can you get some t-shirts done? At that moment, had you ever done that before, or was this like
I do. I work I volunteer with an arts organization here in Austin. The first spin-off of Burning Man. It's called Burning Flipside. And I'd been doing a lot of planning and theme camp organization, not for money, but I'd been doing that. And I always joke that running a theme camp at a burn is the best job experience that I could have ever had for Devolver. Yeah, it's a lot of like get the t-shirts printed, uh, know the guy. Like, oh, I know someone who does t-shirts. Oh, I know someone who does this. Oh, I know someone who does that. So yeah, it's very non-traditional. And at the time, I always actually kind of think like I don't think Devolver realized that they needed someone to do the things that I was doing.
right?
But I freed up a lot of space for like suddenly you didn't have the head of marketing or a major producer trying to book the hotel rooms.
Right.
Suddenly you didn't have those guys and they were kind of freed up from all the little minutia. And not that I think that it's minutia or unimportant, um, but it's the tedious parts, right? Of having these events. If someone's got to get the duct tape there and the multi-tool there and things like that. So they don't have to think about it, and that's what I do.
Right. It sounds to me like a lot of your role, or the role as it's developed, has required you to step into new territory, like figuring things out and doing that problem solving and adapting
100%.
quite a lot. So I want to know like I guess the kind of secrets to like being a versatile individual. Like how do you, when you get a challenge that comes to you that's like, oh, I've never done that before. Um, I know you personally always approach it with a sort of can-do attitude, maybe a little bit of hesitation, but always, no, not a fear or a shutdown.
I Google it.
Sorry,
I Google it.
you Google it.
Just like an IT person would. The first thing I do is I just Google it. They're like, "Hey, we need to do a dinner for 45 people on a boat off the harbor of Nantucket," which has never actually happened, but
Right.
just as a just Google dinners for 45 people in Nantucket and start reading. But I think like and that kind of sounds like a joke, but it's like when you Google information, you have to also know how to sort it and know which
Right.
one's the actual answer. And so it's a lot of that. It's just doing some research and not saying no. Probably I don't say no enough sometimes, I think. But like if someone just needs, if they have a silly idea, like, okay, let's make it work. And And also, like, again, I do know I'm very blessed with a lot of creative friends, a lot of friends with non-traditional jobs. Call your friends, call every resource you have. Don't be afraid to, like, hey, let me buy you lunch, and you tell me all about boat rentals in Nantucket because I
Right.
hear you're an expert or something like that.
Right, right, right. So,
Yeah.
one part Google foo, one part strong relationships.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think the reason that I've been able to do a lot of what I do successfully is strong relationships. We very much pride ourselves, and this is from a standpoint coming into an industry where I don't really deal with Microsoft, I don't really deal with Sony in those ways. I need to have a balloon guy in downtown Los Angeles. I need to have a porta potty guy in downtown Los Angeles. I need to have the best Italian food restaurant in Boston. I need to have a very different set of tools at my disposal. And what I pride myself on very much is that we use almost exactly the same vendors for every event, every show. They want to come back and work with us. We find great vendors will save your ass. If you forget something and you have a relationship with them, they're a lot more willing to jump in and help you out than if
mhm.
it's just, a new person. Doesn't matter how much money you're flinging around an event. They like relationships as much as I do. And I have 90% of their phone numbers in my phone. We send each other Christmas cards and I get baby updates and we text back and forth throughout the year. And that's with like the guy that does our electricity at the E3 parking lot, like things like that,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
It's you just have to be kind of kind and people are kind back and people want those relationships. They don't want a new client every time. So, I mean, I make the joke about Google, but it's 100% the people that you choose to work with.
Right. It's fascinating because, like, I mean, people talk so much about connections being essential in the games industry, and when they
Mhm.
say that, they're often meaning, oh, I know this producer, or oh, I know this publisher, or oh, I know this person or that person. And very seldom is the conversation about, the support staff, vendors, and people who make, the industry mechanics sort of work beyond, just the actual game production. Because there's I mean, I guess I'd like to hear from your opinion. How much of a game's, I don't want to pin success, but how much of a game's success, or what, because sorry, I'm having a hard time explaining this, because I feel like games go beyond just the screen to controller interaction, right? There's a culture around it. There's an experience from the moment you hear about it to the moment you play it, finish it. Um, and I'm curious what, a boots on ground person, what you think. Do you think you have an effect on the way players experience the games, even though you're not, hammering the code yourself?
I would say that so I don't look at the marketing numbers and things like that. So I do have a different kind of vantage point. I've seen games go into PAXs and big conventions with huge setups, massive booths, and then they still flop at the end of the day. And they might have been good games. I mean, again, it's not my department at all to know what actually makes the
Mm-hmm.
game successful. But what I do see is that providing these fan services, it's really great for the developer as well. And I hear this from almost every developer that we've worked with, and you can probably attest to this. Standing in a booth and showing off your game, and if you're really listening, and if you're listening to the moments when people are cheering or they're reacting to something that's happening in the game, or they're saying, oh, there's a bug on this level, it's almost like the best QA in the world that you can't pay for. So those are great. And I think that like if a fan goes up to a booth, and I've been a fan and I've been an exhibitor, if you walk up to a booth and they're really nice and they're kind to you and the developer's nice and everybody at the booth is warm and welcoming, you're probably more likely to buy that game or at least be a
Mm-hmm.
fan of that game and tell your friends like, oh yeah, I went by, the booth of this game and they were so nice to me and like they're such good people. And I don't want to say that like it directly translates to sales, but it definitely endears people to your game and it endears
Mm-hmm.
people to what your art is doing. And for us, it's like we're asking these developers to take a week off of making the game, minimum,
Mm-hmm.
a week off of their life to travel with us, to stand in a booth, to say the same thing on a 10-minute
Right.
loop over and over again. It's like, why would you not make sure that they have lunch? Why would you not make
It's
sure
still
that they
burned
have a
in my
nice?
brain.
Yeah, it's like the loop. All of them are kind of burned into my brain. Like I could demo every single one of those games in a heartbeat. But it's like, why would you not offer that kind of a service? Because a publisher is supposed to take care of their developers, and beyond the making sure that milestones get met, beyond the normal things that that a publisher does, like why wouldn't you make sure that they get out of the booth and get some fresh air and get some lunch in them? Oh, if they need cough medicine because they picked up Pax Pox, which used to sound a lot less scary. Why would you not just go send someone to get them cold medicine? Or, if someone is like, I've never been to Boston in my life, I really want to eat a big lobster, like, get them the big lobster, right? Like, these people are traveling on your behalf, and you should present. I mean, you don't have to buy a big lobster and a big fancy dinner every single night, but it's like, you should just take care of them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't make a game, so and you guys probably can't really throw it. Well, you can because I've seen you throw events, but like most devs can't throw an event. So it's like I'll do what I do, and you do what you do, and together we'll rise.
Right. Yeah. It is a nice reciprocity. Or was a rising tide lifts all ships, or whatever the saying goes. Once
What
you have a good vibe, and
needs to remember is that like widespread. It's we all rise when we all rise. When we're nice to each other and when we're helping each other out. If we're at PAX and my neighbors, forgotten their gaff tape,
mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say, no, you can't have my gaff tape because if their booth looks like crap or is falling apart, it's going to make mine look bad. And it's just not nice. It's not kind. It's not the way that you want to operate in this world. And, that's especially at PAX. We've always had the best booth neighbors behind the scenes, the events crew, 99.9% could not be nicer, more welcoming, and we're all just there to make sure that we're having that experience because it's not only how we treat the developers and how the developers react to being in that booth. It's these people are paying a lot of money, these fans. They're paying a lot of
Right.
money, their vacation. They're coming there and they want to see and feel and have the best time that they possibly can. It's like if you take pride in your work, you don't want them to show up to a booth that's about to cave in on their head and nothing works, right? You want it to
Mm-hmm.
be very nice for them. At least that's how I feel about it.
Let's talk a little bit more about that, the booth experience then, because it is something that I have seen you guys ramp up to an insane degree from when I first started.
I'm
Uh,
gonna give most of the credit there to JR, to Jonathan Rosales. He has leveled the look of our booth up in ways that I could never have even imagined. So a lot of credit to him. JM, I think everybody at Devolver knows, or if you know Devolver, you know JM. He's done a lot of hard work. I mean, we have an insanely good crew. But yeah, so I want to make sure it's not all like resting on my back that I didn't level it up that way.
right. But I mean, talk to me about what goes into like actually setting up something like that. I know you guys are there with building day or days before.
Mm-hmm.
What is the hardest part of setting up such a monolithic booth and making sure it runs properly?
Well, we're pretty blessed now that we have a crew, a company that we hire that actually builds the actual booth. And they're just as much part of our team. We go to steak dinners with them. We love those guys so much. They make us look really good. I think the hardest part is kind of the nuts and bolts and the managing what you want versus what's actually possible within the convention center rules and with the union labor laws and things like
Right.
that. And then managing what you want with what you can afford
Mm-hmm.
and knowing when to splurge, when to spend good money, when to cut that out, when to say, "Great, that would be really cool, but it's not really going to do anything." That's kind of the hardest part is because like I want every booth of mine to feel like Disneyland. I want
Mm-hmm.
a roller coaster in every booth, but we can't afford one, right? Can't have a roller coaster in a booth in the convention center. It's not allowed, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah, probably not. But yeah, so it's like managing your expectations is definitely the hardest part. Um,
That's hold on. Let me just stop there because that's wild to hear considering the contrast between like what we do in the indie mega booth with our little like cardboard signs and stuff, and then like managing expectations while you've got cherry blossoms and grand arches and 50-foot screens.
With a mega booth, you're always kind of limited. You're always kind of limited by space because there's not
Yes.
much. But it's such a cool space, and it's such a cool. It was such a cool place to be seen. And you're in half of a 10 by 20 because it's a what is it?
Yeah, I
It's
think
10 by
it's something like that. It's
it's a
tiny.
very small little space, and then you have to consider your personal gear. Your backpack has to fit in it. Your actual meat sack that's demoing the game has to fit in it, and then you have that front space to really make an impact. We've had to manage our expectations and what we can do in the mega booth as well. Like I said, I think that's the hardest part. The next hardest part is remembering everything because you think it's like, okay, we're gonna need 5 controllers, we're gonna need 5 monitors, and no, it's like, well, we're gonna, we need this little thing and this little. It's
Right.
the little nuts and bolts.
Right.
And that's kind of like
adapter and
it's a good event planner doesn't sit there and say nothing will go wrong on the show floor. A good event planner knows how to fix something once you're on the show floor and it's broken. So that's another consideration. I don't know if I can call that the hardest part, though. I think the hardest part is getting through day 4.
Just the fatigue for you?
Yeah. It's like it hits around 2 p.m. because you're so tired and there's only 4 more hours and you just want to go home and you've had a lovely time, but the loops of the demos are still in your head and everyone's the same and you're just like, I just want to go, and then you're like, oh, but I have to tear all this down and pack it all up and send it back home too.
It's such a weird time on the dev side too, because like last hours on the day 4 is when I find I get the people who pass by our booth. They're like, oh, I really like that game and I'm going to make sure I check that out later. And then in the 11th hour, they're like, oh shit, I'm running out of time. I've really got to go and see that game I was interested in. And so you've still got to like turn it on and you get some great interactions, but like it's hard. It is very tough.
From my side, we get the weirdest pitches on day 4 in the afternoon. It's like the people that need to like pitch something to you, but you weren't big enough for them the first couple of days, or they're like, oh, I didn't hit enough of the tick marks. I gotta go find some more companies, and everyone's fried and no one's speaking coherently or directly. And I had this one guy from a company come up, and he was lovely. He was such a nice person, but he gave me his pitch and he gave me his card, and it was like he forgot that he had ever done it, and so he just goes right back into it and he hands me another card. And I was like, okay, and I started to say, and he starts back in and he starts to pull out a third card, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this dude needs a nap like so badly. Yeah. So like, do you need some water? And he's like, yeah, I'll take some water. So he drank some water and he was doing a little bit better. But yeah, it's exhausting, to work from the show.
So like, given the amount we've just shit talked it, why are we missing it so much?
Because, oh my god, it's so much fun. It makes sense, the 4-day packs, but like, it's so much fun. It's togetherness and it's fan interactions, and we have like the same fans that come back to the booth, and we'll start playing games to give them free merch, and we just start getting silly with it. And if you've ever been to a PAX, there's nothing quite like it. And it reminds us that what we're doing is fun, because we work in video games. Like, we don't work in insurance sales or like, something. I'm trying to think of something even more boring than insurance sales, and I can't. But it's like, we work in video games. This is amazing. And it's like, how can you really complain about your job when there's like, you're in the coffee line and there's a Wookiee and $1 million dragon next to you, and that's what you're doing for work that day.
Right. So obviously there hasn't been a lot of convention happenings or plannings or going on lately. So what have you
been doing for the world right now?
What have you been up to then?
Doing more merch and more internal, like, special operations. Doing some planning on what events are going to look like when it's not
bad,
unsafe and clean. Yeah, I'm trying to like think of some way to say it without being a total bummer, but like when it's all kind of back to normal. Even when there's not a show, there's still just bits and bobs that have to get moved around the world. Things have to get ordered. Right now we're doing our holiday packages, and working on some new merch. Death's Door vinyl just dropped. Hit merch.devolverdigital.com to buy it. It's fun stuff like that, you know.
Right. And how do you find stepping into the merch world? Like, what has been the? I mean, I don't want to say it's been a transition because it's just more of a lean-in focus over the last couple of years. But
Yeah,
what's that side like?
it's pretty good. It's a little bit more of a challenge in the last 2 years because like I knew what sold at shows. I knew really
Mm-hmm.
well what sold at shows. I knew which type of items. I knew about what quantities. I was starting to really nail it. Then we were moving it online. That had been in the works before the COVID came down, and of course we just ended up unfortunately launching it right at about that same time where nobody had any money. Everybody was
Right.
scared to order things. So now we've moved to more of doing like pre-orders and things like that where we can gauge how much something's going to sell before we order it and it's sitting in a warehouse rotting,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is better for the environment anyway. So I like that. It's been a little that's been a pretty big challenge is trying to figure out like what people want while they're sitting at home.
Right. I mean, can
And
you
then
enlighten
I
some
mean,
of the differences?
well, I mean, we've noticed that t-shirts aren't selling like at a show there could
Right.
be like its
That's
own,
right.
yeah. No one really, especially in 2020, no one was really ordering t-shirts because like
Right.
where were you going? Yeah. Like, oh cool, I got my new shirt, I'm gonna sit around the house in it, you know. Um the collectible games, like Special Reserve games and what they were doing was still doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
Vinyl does very well still. Figurines, things like that. And now it's just this sort of like a weird land of like there's supply chain issues and how do you get things more locally produced and then you have to do smaller batches. So yeah, it's been like I said, it's been that's been a big challenge this year. It's trying to figure out like the way to do it well, not waste our time, not waste any of the developers' time, not waste any of the developers' revenue on things
Mm-hmm.
that are going to sit in a warehouse forever. Um, so I'm still perfecting it.
Right. So with when it comes to how we do our stuff, it's we don't really consider the manufacturing process or whether it makes sense or if it's going to. It's like the reason we just did our physical edition PS4 ones is literally because Jake was like, I just really want that, so let's see if we can do
100%.
that. Is that
That's kind of
still the
maybe.
driving factor?
I mean, obviously we want merch to like cover its own costs,
Mm-hmm.
but really we consider it, you know, it's marketing. It's an honor when someone wants to buy a shirt of your game or of our company and put it on their body and walk around and advertise us. Like it's an absolute honor. And it's so cool for us to walk around events and we like start seeing them pop up all over the place, or you'll see a shirt from like that you sold 5 years ago and you're like, that guy's still wearing a shirt. I love it. But yeah, it should absolutely be considered a fan service first. It's something that you would want to wear. Don't make a t-shirt that you think is heavy and scratchy just to have your name on a
Mm-hmm.
t-shirt. Make a really good quality shirt. Um, and you can attest to the fine quality of Devolver shirts. Make stuff that you want, and then offer it to the fans who love your game, want to be a part of your thing, want to be a part of what you've got going on, want to be a part of the community, want to represent you, and then try to hopefully get your cost back on what you spent,
Right.
and then maybe you make a little bit more and you can pay for a dinner or something. I don't know, like. Yeah, I think it's very obvious when people are doing merch just to like try to juggernaut money. And I
Right.
think that the quality of the merch usually suffers. And there's a way to do hopefully both, you know? It's like hopefully your merch takes off in a fantastic way that like you become the next big hot t-shirt
Right.
company. But at the same time it's like I feel like even Filthy Casual, they made that t-shirt because they wanted to wear that t-shirt and you could tell. And it's a community and it's an in joke now and it's a
Right.
it's a thing that you can do. But like that was absolutely started with the purest and best intentions. I'm assuming I'm looking outside looking in. I see that. So I think that like I said, it's possible to have big success, but still treat it very homegrown and organic.
The I mean, we've both seen plenty of companies or smaller indies trying different merch strategies. Is there anything that you can say for anybody listening that would be thinking about doing something at a show? What are like some of the mistakes that you see indies?
Ordering too much.
Ordering too much. I've done that.
Ordering too much. I've done it. Everyone's done it. Anybody that's got merch has done it. Ordering too much. It's better to be sold out on day 2 than to ship 7 boxes home.
Right.
Every single time, like across the board. And like I said, then you get home. Where do you store it in your home? What do you do with it? You don't want to donate it to Goodwill.
Yeah.
Ordering too much is 100% like across the board. And then I can't stress this enough. Cheap T-shirts, bad T-shirts. There's like, it happens to me more at concerts and things, or used to. You get so excited about a band and you walk up to their merch table and it's loud and you're trying to get, okay, I want number 37 in a medium, like really fast. And you pay and then they hand the shirt over and it's like a burlap sack with
right.
thing, and you're like, I mean, I'm glad I just gave you some money, but I would have liked to have walked around town in your shirt too. Which goes back to the make things that you want. Like if you wouldn't put that shirt on your body, like if you wouldn't be proud of it, it's almost always better to like spend a couple extra dollars. And it does, I mean, it's not that much more expensive to get better shirts. I've done the pricing, but it's almost always worth it. And you find that people kind of, like I said, they want your stuff.
Right. And it's better to lose it in your margins than
yeah.
Right.
And have a shirt that no one wears, because like I said, the other part of that is you go to a show, you want as many people in your shirt as possible, right? Like it is advertising, and it sounds a little gross, but you have to kind of consider that like someone walking around PAX in a Devolver shirt is advertising for us. And if they don't want to even wear your T-shirt, then you lose that too.
In terms of ordering the right amount, any pro tips? How do you gauge?
No, it's too wild. It's too random. I mean, presumably by the time that you're going to a bigger show like PAX, you kind of already know what your audience is, right? About. You should always ask your publisher, you should always kind of know what your expected sales might be. But yeah, there's no proper matrix. And if somebody out there has the proper matrix and they want to tell me what it is,
right.
I mean, we've made shirts that are like the most beautiful things I've ever seen, and they just didn't sell very well. And then like we've made shirts that I was like, okay, that's kind of a mass shirt, and then they're flying off the shelves. Figuring out what fans want is always going to be kind of a sweet spot. I would say that like a mega booth. No, I don't even want to try to guess what a mega booth would sell there. I'm not going to do that.
So you mentioned that you switched a little bit more into the pre-order limited run sort of like model. Can you talk to us a bit about for people who have never participated in something like that or operated run? How does it work, and what are the benefits to you as a producer, manufacturer, and are there any drawbacks?
What we've done is we do like 100-hour sale for a lot of things. So like the death metal jacket that we did, it was quite popular, but it was only on sale for 100 hours. And once the 100 hours was out, it was out. And so the benefit is 100% knowing, okay, we sold 100 jackets or something like that, right? Let's use that number. And then you're going to always want to order like 120 jackets because packages will get lost, sizes will be wrong, something will happen. So-and-so will call and say, oh my God, I really forgot to make an order. Can you please help me? And they're really nice, and you just want to ship them a jacket. But yeah, 100%, it's just knowing what you're dealing with before you actually make the order. Because like I said, if you order 1,000 jackets and you only sell 100, what happens to 900 jackets?
You're wearing this. You're wearing a lot of the same thing every day.
A new one every single day.
Yeah. But are there any substantial drawbacks to the model, you think?
I think that it kills the immediacy of like, I've clicked on this button and it's going to be here in 2 days.
Right.
And we're very conditioned to, with Amazon and everything just fast, we're very conditioned to, I want to order this, I want to get it here as quickly as possible. It 100% kills that. But again, it's like, you're going to lose some sales because it's not an immediate thing. You're going to save some money because you're not paying for warehouse space that you're not using. You're saving Mother Earth because you're not producing things that you don't need.
Right.
But fans aren't quite as happy because they don't get it tomorrow.
I can yeah, we're going through that. Like we've with the limited run for the PS4 copies, it's just like, oh, okay, the sale's over and we sold out instantly, but like now we've got to wait for manufacturing and like
Yeah.
all that
Well,
stuff.
and stuff like the physical copies of games and the vinyl is even worse because that's
Yeah.
months. That's not wait a week for my t-shirt printer glass embroidery to get online. Like that's 6 months to 8 months. Probably going to be a delay because everything's delayed right now. So that it's really cool though because for me when I see the orders come in and I see things doing well, especially on like the Gungeon vinyl was like, you're not going to get it until November. That's a long time from now. And everyone's like, okay, but we love your game so much we're going to buy that
Hmm.
anyways. That's a cool feeling. Like that's a separate feeling, but it's a still a really cool feeling that people love that game so much they would wait 6 months on a vinyl.
Right. And then, I mean, you do get the nice factor. Like today, I just got my Dust Biters. It just
That one
surprised.
was quick, though. I'm gonna shout out. That one was really quick. They did
Not
a
bad.
great job.
Not bad. I don't usually participate in Kickstarter, so I don't know what the usual timeline is. But I was very anxious to get it. I was looking forward to it.
Yeah. Same. I don't really know what the timeline on that one was, but that felt really quick to get that one. So that was good. It was a great job.
Question in the chat, and I think we may have already sort of answered. But how do you know if it's too much or not? Though, is the answer just see how many you have left over?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sell the first time at a first show. Um, but because I don't like, I can't really answer that because like whatever you're about to make, I don't know the scape. If it's a game, I don't know the scape of
Hmm.
your game. If it's a meme, I don't know how funny your meme actually is. Uh, you're gonna kind of have to know your audience, and your audience will always tell you that they're gonna buy a lot of things and then they don't. That's why
Right.
I would say I kind of heartily recommend pre-orders for a lot of things.
Hmm.
Um, but the other thing with t-shirts is like I do have storage space, so I'm privileged there, and you're always gonna want somebody that like needs to get a free shirt sent to them. So it's not bad to have extras around. It's not bad to have some leftovers and things like that.
Right. 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 And I mean, I guess, from my standpoint, the best method I could suggest is going in with a small, low, undercut your expectations, and then
Yep.
undercut them once more, and then see go low risk first, and then slowly ramp up rather than uh,
Yeah, and keep track of your sales numbers. Even if you think you're going to remember, you'll always forget. Keep track of sizing information and
mhm.
like, okay, break it down by the size, break it down by the type, and keep track of that because that was the best. Like, I just showed up at a PAX and started selling T-shirts one day, and then I started keeping meticulous little spreadsheets of like, okay, we sold 5 smalls of this and 5 smalls of that, and then after enough years, you get like a really good forecast of, okay, Devolver proper shirts will sell about this, Gungeon shirts will sell like this, Hotline shirts will sell like this. Um, and then, like, again, don't be so concerned with selling everything you've got, but do make limited numbers because we have had like shirts that, in the end, not very many people bought them, but the development team got some, our crew got some, we got to give some to fans that really like the game. So, like I said, you just kind of have to go with the attitude that you're not there to make a ton of money on merch yet.
Right. It's funny that you mentioned the sizing estimations because that's something we got woefully wrong. Both Jake and I being over 6'6", we assumed there were a lot more double XL people out there than there are. So we,
And you would it would be inclusive with your size range. We go up to 4XL on just about everything that we possibly can, and then we go down to extra small. Um, we're venturing into ladies cuts. Ladies cuts a very hard territory,
mhm.
but been venturing into ladies cuts and trying to make sure we have at least a few available for every show. But yeah, there's nothing worse than when like a 4XL gamer walks up and you don't have anything to sell them. But at the same time, like it's not as many as you think that it would be.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely overordered based just on my own perspective. For,
But that's cool though, because I do have a box now, a smaller box, but it's like if someone calls me and says like, "Hey, we've got a 3XL gamer that needs a little care package," I've got one ready to go.
right on.
So, depending on your storage space and the things that you've got, like keeping stuff on hand, no one has ever been offended by getting sent a couple of free t-shirts. They love you for it. You can make a lot of people happy that way.
So we've been
I have
lucky.
a free Vagabond t-shirt.
Classic. You have a very exclusive one, actually. If I'm
I
not
have the red
mistaken,
one.
you have a very rare one. The so we've been messing around with different print to order manufacturing. We've the Vagabond shirts. Yours was a special order, but we've also done big bulk orders before. I've never been fully happy with any sort of particular process. Is there a process that you go through when you're seeking vendors or the manufacturing process for merch?
We, I have, it's almost like a rule for me. I don't do any direct to garment. I think that it
Mm-hmm.
never, even the best direct to garment has never felt right. It doesn't feel good and it doesn't wear. Usually if I'm trying somebody new out, I'll just do a small run with them and to see. I like local printers. We split our shirts. We split between a company up in Dallas and a company here in Austin where I'm based, and so I can drive over, I can text them if I need to. Again, back to those relationships. Like once you find a good t-shirt printer, hang on. And they're always going to do quality work for you. But yeah, I mean, just do a small limited run. I think 24 is usually most places minimum. You can just bring for that. Or if they're close by, mask up, walk in and say, "Hey, let me see what you've printed before."
Mm-hmm. And then when you're trying to do something a little more out there than a t-shirt, an action figure, a plushie, you guys
Mhm.
have made some wild stuff. How on earth do you source for that?
That varies. And that's something that like we're testing out some new vendors for new stuff for next
Exciting.
year. Yeah. Uh, Again, it's a lot of Google, but it's also ask around. You know, if you're in a booth and you find a plush that feels kind of like what the plush, because there's different, you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? There's different plush types. There's different feels and there's different like tones. If you feel one that feels good, ask how they where they got it made.
Right on. I mean, that
Yeah.
seems.
Never be afraid to be like, hey, who made this?
Oh, we're back to
Like,
we're back to Google Foo and relationships,
go ahead and
communication.
ask and phone a friend, man. Just, I mean, this is the thing is, like I said, most people in this industry, like, I'm not afraid to tell people where I get, like, just it's not trade information.
Right.
It's like if that helps my vendors get more business, why wouldn't you tell? Like, it shouldn't have to be a secret.
Right. Right. There's I don't want to call it, but a rookie attitude I've seen that treats a lot of the indie space because it's such a niche market and um, you know attention is hard to get a hold of. There's sometimes a sense of competition there, but it is something I've seen you avoid. That like
Me personally,
well, I mean, I've never felt that I've never felt competitive
no.
with you, Kate.
I can honestly say when I came in, it wasn't as pronounced as it is in a lot of people that I've seen, but it was definitely within me, and I felt the same thing. I was like, oh, I have a great T-shirt printer. I can't tell anyone
Mm,
who prints my T-shirts, and that's an example. But it was, yeah, I see that that's a very natural instinct. You just have to realize that like a T-shirt printer can print T-shirts for two companies, right?
right.
Like, it doesn't. It's not like using a finite supply of ink, and I'm never going to get my shirts printed if that guy gets it. Again, like there, it's like I'm just going to set up a good relationship with that guy so that maybe or that person, so that maybe my shirts, don't get printed 80th, they get printed first or second or something like that, right?
Right.
And I don't, yeah, but I think I was, especially with my vendors, I was quite competitive when I first entered this industry. And then you just realize that, hopefully, you realize at a certain point that you just don't need to be that way. And if
Mm-hmm.
you are that way now, you can stop at any time. Stop. It's easy, I promise you. Just stop being competitive.
Are there any other conceptions or attitudes that you sort of had when you started versus now?
Um, I think I thought that I always had to be 100% the hardest working person in any room that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel like I could say no and set boundaries. And not boundaries like with my physical self or anything like that, but like set boundaries on my time. Um, I gave myself a little bit of self burnout that year trying to prove myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it it's the way I did it. I don't want to say that I regret it, but I think if I would have learned earlier that like, hey, you know what, this is a Saturday, I'm not going to answer that email. That email can wait until Monday. If I would have learned that a little bit sooner, I think I would have saved myself some headache.
Right.
Um, because if I'm not good, if I don't take a Saturday to myself, and if I answer my emails on Saturdays, like I'm not going to be good at my job. You can't redline all the time. And that's something that translates very well to burnout in general is that you have to stop and take care of yourself. And I don't think I did that great in the beginning. I think I'm doing much better now. But I mean, considering I'm doing better, being gentler and kinder to myself. But that was something that like in 2019 I thought I'd really nailed the balance of is being able to just be like, you know what? And it's not that people were emailing me egregiously on Saturday. It was just it's a global industry. It never turns off. And if you're not careful, it's their Monday morning sometimes, but it's your, evening. It's your Sunday evening still or something like that. And you just have to remember that like they're just emailing you because they need to email you, not because they need you to respond immediately.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's, I mean, are you responding your best when you're hasty
Yeah.
to, right. That's the other side
Yeah.
of it. That's where I lost a lot of points, I think.
Well, and like I said, with the globalness of what we do, where you could be working with a porting company across the sea, like everyone's just seeing localization teams in all sorts of cities, vendors in all sorts of cities, devs in all sorts of cities. It's really hard to feel just like it's the city that never sleeps because the
Mhm.
games industry is a very small town. We are global, we're all over the place, but this is such a small town. We all talk to each other, we all know each other, we all know everything. We hear the gossip, we hear who's a jerk, we hear who's an asshole, we hear who's a nice person. And so again, it's like sometimes with the globalness of it, it just feels like there's just never a moment to chill. And recognizing that like you are certainly allowed to plug out, unplug, take some time for yourself. It's gonna probably, like you said, you're gonna answer that email better, you're gonna respond to that message better, you're gonna be more intentional with your word and more impeccable with your word when you respond. So I think that, like I said, learning that was a huge lesson for me, and it made a lot of good differences for my life.
I think one of the hardest parts about that, like, overextension problem or the burnout problem is realizing when you're overextended, right? Especially if when you're young, it's something like you don't know your limits yet. And I'm curious, are there what were your telltale signs for yourself when you finally realize, oh, maybe I'm pushing a little too hard, or you think are signs that generally people should pay attention to with themselves?
I think that like by the time that you're thirsty, you should have already had water. And so at first I noticed that I was sort of blowing up, not blowing up, but like I was snapping at my family a little bit more. And I was like, it's, 8 o'clock at night and I'm trying to finally cook dinner and I'm looking at my phone and I'm stirring and my sauce is burning. And those are some good signs because I was like, wow, that's like 2 nights this week that I may have done that. And it's not like it wasn't like a big show week, the week before a show, like a moment where it could be a little bit more justifiable. It was just like, that's a random week. And that was the way that I was doing things. And so then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to just like stop and I'm going to cook this dinner. But like I had said, it was like by the time you're thirsty, you're already getting dehydrated a little bit.
Right.
So I've been a lot better to just stop myself to before I get to the point of snapping. And that just means that like even if I don't feel tired, I'll take a break. Even if I don't feel, you know, like I'm getting burned out, I go ahead and just like take a walk real quick and take a 15-minute walk every day. Getting out of your space 100% is especially where we're at right now. I mean, I was working from home before this all started, and going to the shows was my taking a walk. It was my getting out. It was my seeing people. And then I could come home and introvert and then go out and extrovert and charge my batteries and come home. And when I lost that connection, I was not going outside. I was not taking a walk and looking at the deer in my yard or anything like that. And so I think to stop it, you just have to be proactive and you can't just react to your self care only when you're feeling the most stress. You have to kind of bank a little bit of self-care every single day, even if it's just walking around the block.
Yeah, yeah. Regimented attention to one's needs is kind of
Set an alarm for it on your phone and just be
yeah.
like,
Oh
okay,
no.
well, I walk out the door and I'm gonna just walk around for 15 minutes, or we do jumping jacks or something. Just get outside. If you're, obviously if you're able to, if you're in an area that's safe to walk around or things like that. If you don't have mobility issues, but just do something to get yourself out of what you're immediately doing on the screen and on this screen and on the big screen. Like just get away from a screen for a minute.
Um, Now I think we're both kind of craving that the return to
Yes.
fun convention times. And you now you mentioned a bit about making plans for what the future looks like. I'm not looking for hyper details here or anything specific, but like, what do you think the return is going to be like, or when do you think it's, because like I mean there's been a PAX. It was
Yep.
it was a very small affair.
Did not
Not
go.
did not go that well.
And we've
Uh,
lost a pack. Rest in the South.
yeah, yeah, no, tragic. Um, so I'm curious, what do you think this return, like last year? Everybody went hard on. Oh, they're all digital now. We've
Yep.
got Devolver Land Expo, download now. We've got Gamescom had their digital event. Amaze had a digital event. Um, but what do
I think
you?
the digital events were awesome. Like it made these shows extremely accessible to people that weren't ever able to go. Again, either for like mobility issues or for money issues, they couldn't afford tickets and flights and hotels and
Mhm.
things like that. So it brought some of this content that we didn't, maybe, I don't even think we were aware of how much we were, I don't want to say gatekeeping, but like
Right.
how much we were closed off from these people at home. And I think that losing PAX South it's tragic for a lot of reasons. It's one of my favorite PAXs. And I completely like sympathize with Reed Pop. They're such a great team, and I'm sure that wasn't easy for him. But I always called that the cheat PAX, because kids in the South, like if you're in Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, you have no problem jumping in the car and driving 16 hours to Texas for a show. We did that all the time when I was growing up. Like I like there's a lot that's been lost with losing some of these shows, both virtually or physically and digitally. I'd love to see more of a hybrid though. I'd like to be able to be in a room with people, be in a room with that energy, but still have like a lot of elements of it that are accessible online, accessible to people who can't travel that time. And I don't really know the best ratio to do that. I mean, a physical event is always going to be a physical event, and you can try to make it as accessible to people at home as possible, but it's still not going to be like you're there. So I don't know if like truly hybrid events are the way to go, or if
Hmm.
we just keep some events virtual and keep some physical, and we try to hit both. I'd like to see more of the knowledge based, like the panels and things like that. I'd love to see more of those go digital, uh, so that they're accessible online, so that that information is not locked up behind a badge and a ticket and a flight and a hotel. I can definitely say that like having those repositories of information would be, having them be more accessible would be awesome. And then yeah, in terms of like what I actually think is going to happen, that changes day to day. Like 2 days ago, I was feeling one kind of way, and then the new variant came, and
Right.
then people. I mean, if I'm going to be very honest and blunt, like I don't think people want to travel to America right now, because not just of the COVID, but like our political situation's been pretty terrible. But at the same time, I know everybody's craving each other and wanting to
Hmm.
see each other and to have these experiences again. So I think that we're just going to have to start seeing. I mean, I was feeling a lot more confident about the spring 2 days ago, but I think spring feels kind of okay. I mean,
You're giving us the timeline, eh?
I mean, no, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not a doctor. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
Dr.
no, no, no. Of
Fountain.
course, of course, of course.
I can't like really say, but like I said, I can say that like I think everybody's done a really great job of doing their best to stay connected while we've been so separate. And I know that everybody, like most everybody I've met in the industry, I know we hear the stories about the toxic people and stuff like that. But I can say if I'm in a room with 10 people, 9 of them are probably pretty damn good.
Right.
And that's on a bare minimum. Like, I've just met some of the greatest, nicest, kindest, most genuine, authentic human beings, and not just at my company. Like, that's across the board. And you've got a lot of people that are reaching out, checking on each other, sending each other stupid little gifts, making sure that there's a Jackbox party happening, when one's needed. So, like I said, I don't really know what the future holds, but I think we're doing a pretty darn good job of like taking care of our own. And I hope that that continues. I hope people continue to reach out when they need help, and hope people continue to just be nice because, like I said, we work in video games. This is dream job stuff.
Right.
Like, what reason is there to be like not nice in this industry?
It happens.
Yeah, we see it every day. It's just, and that's what makes all of the racism, the misogyny, and the horrible comments online and the trolling, and it's what makes it even more disheartening. Is because, like I said, we're not an insurance, or we all got into this industry because we love games, we love to play games, we want to hang out with gamers, we want to work with gamers, and all the horrible stuff that happens in our industry, it sucks sometimes. It's like, man, 10-year-old me would just cry knowing that I worked in video games. Like, I would just, I couldn't even, I grew up in small town Texas. I didn't even know that these were jobs. I didn't know that people did this. Video games were just something that kind of showed up from Japan, and I enjoyed them, but like I didn't get the whole system right, and I certainly didn't think that I could ever work in the video game industry. That wasn't something I was ever meant to do. And now I'm sitting here and I'm in the video games industry and I know all these cool people, and I've got 2 kids and they're 13 and 10, and they've worked the door at E3. They get like, it's so casual to them.
Right.
And like they blew off Suda 51 one time. It was just like, I gotta get back to work. I can't talk to you. Like it's so the doors are open for them, and then there's a scariness of like, but I don't want you to deal with I don't want you to deal with the comments, right? So I don't know. I guess that's what like I hope to combat. I hope to at least be somewhat of a force for good, and I hope to know people that are, because I just feel like we're incredibly privileged, and anytime stuff like that happens, it just bums me out even more. Sorry, that was my soapbox rant.
No, it's incredibly well said, and I'm kind of grateful to hear it all.
Yeah.
I guess as we start the wind down here, is there anything?
Oh God, I feel like there's a zinger coming.
Is there anything that you would recommend devs do to make your lives a little easier as operations people during shows?
Oh.
Small things.
No comment? No, I'm trying to see if I can answer this realistically, because I know that there's probably more devs than event people watching this. Don't add anybody to the dinner reservation without asking. And say thank you. But like, if anything, I feel like I get too much praise and too many thank yous. Like sometimes it's almost like embarrassing because I get thanked for everything. So I think you guys have that one down. But yeah, I mean, treat me like a person. But again, like I think everybody does that. I mean, treating me like a human being back, not like I'm the waitress or the secretary or something like that. That's always going to help. But I can't think of too many moments where that hasn't already happened. Like I said, I feel like most times I get far too much praise, but you're there to do a job and I'm there to do a job, and if we're mutually respectful towards each other, it's gonna sing. But yeah, I would have to say my final answer is don't add anybody to the dinner reservation without checking with me first.
Very important. Very important.
Very important.
Awesome. Is there anything anywhere you want people to direct their eyes once they leave here? Is there anything they should check out? And
I think you should check out what's happening to the United States Supreme Court and write a very angry letter to your representative. I think you should check out what's happening to Rodney Reed in Texas, and I think you should write another very angry letter and watch the documentary. And I think that you should donate some money to a local homeless shelter because it's about to get cold.
that is a very, very good, all good. Very different from our usual. Please check out my game. Please buy my game. It's very much better. Much better than the usual. Please buy my game. Kate, it is a absolute pleasure to catch up and dive into your very interesting world of the being of operations. It's a side we don't get to hear from much, and I adore you. And it's a blast to have you on the show. Yeah, I guess, gang, that's gonna be it for now. I don't know where you're going next, but we'll find somewhere. Hold on, give me 1 second to quickly. Anybody actually working? Let's see. There's a new RPG Maker dev working. We're gonna go and you guys can hang with them. They look like they've got 1 viewer. Okay, this is gonna be great. All right, guys. See you later. And Kate. Yeah, we'll catch you soon. Bye, guys.